Hey guys, today I'm ranking my very worst bookkeeping tasks, the ones I hate, all the way to my very favorite bookkeeping tasks. I wasn't actually sure if I should start with the worst or start with the best, but I decided to start with the worst. So number 25, my least favorite bookkeeping task, because I do not do it, is preparing taxes. And so as I'm counting down from number 25, the worst, to number 1, my favorite, I do have some videos about certain of these topics, like invoicing, for example. I have a whole video just about invoicing. And so I'm gonna put a little asterisk in the title when I mention it, so then you can find that video on my channel if you're interested. It was a lot, so I didn't really want to link them all in the description box, but definitely go find that video. Just search it in my channel if you're interested in more info. So you'll sense a theme. The worst few are things I have chosen not to do, not to learn. That maybe they're not that bad, but I just have made a choice not to do them. So like I said, that is preparing taxes. And then I also put sales tax in there because in Oregon, we don't have sales tax. And I've never had a client that has a point of sale where they have to do sales tax. So I don't know how to do that actually, which is kind of weird probably to some of you. Also tracking inventory. That is something I've never done for a client. I've chosen not to take clients that track inventory. It just seems very tedious to me. I did learn how to do it in a class one time, but I'm not really that interested in doing it as a bookkeeper. All right, and counting down, then number 22 is big cleanups. So if a bookkeeping client comes to me and their books are totally messed up, totally terrible, that is not one of my favorite things to do, is clean up the books and get them back to normal. Usually I have to do some cleaning up when I have a new client. You know, that could take me 1 hour, it could take me 5 hours, but I've had to do cleanups that take me a month sometimes, and that just really, I find overwhelming. It's hard to know where to start. It feels like you're doing all this work, and then I get stressed that it's costing the client a lot of money. And so it is definitely not my favorite thing to do. And next on the list comes receipt management. And kind of going along with that is number 20 is organizing paperwork. So I hate it anytime someone gives me a big box of paperwork and I'm supposed to either input that into QuickBooks or into a spreadsheet or something, or anytime I have to pull any data off of a piece of paper. I hate doing that. I'd much rather download a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet off their bank and then upload it into QuickBooks, or find a more digital way to do things. And I will say, if you're a little newer to bookkeeping, this list is in a weird order. There's no kind of rhyme or reason. I just started listing the 25 things in order of how I dislike them to how I like them. But if you look at this list right here, this is actually a more organized list of bookkeeper services. And I do have a dedicated video just on these services, and it follows a more linear pattern if you watch that video. So for the first 3 that are green on this table, I call level 1. Those are just the basic bookkeeping tasks. So categorizing, reconciling, sending reports. And then the middle section is kind of a little another step up. Maybe you can add these services little by little, and that's paying bills, invoicing, and cleanups. And then as you figure out what you're doing a little bit more, you can move on to doing things like inventory and payroll. So I actually just today made a playlist with that video along with a few other videos that talk about services you can provide as a bookkeeper. So I did what's the number 1 service you can start with, and then I did how to add a service and stuff like that. So you can check out that playlist. Here are a few of the videos that are on it. But if you're trying to figure out more what is this bookkeeper thing all about, those videos are probably going to be a little more helpful than this one because it's more linear. This is just a big list and my personal preferences. All right, and getting back to the list, number 19 is making bank deposits. So sometimes as a bookkeeper, I do have to actually go to the bank with cash or checks and do a bank deposit. It's not the worst thing in the world. Sometimes I guess it's kind of nice to get out of the office. I find it to be kind of a waste of time. And those kind of tend to be clients that are maybe less into digital options. I think usually you can, not cash, but you can do check images and stuff. Anyways, I don't love going to the bank. Number 18 is recording things to depreciate. I don't really know how to do this. Usually I get help from a CPA for this. Depending on the client, sometimes CPAs want to know, what is being depreciated, big assets. And this is a good time to mention I am a bookkeeper, not an accountant, not a tax preparer, not a CPA. So I don't have as much training as some of those people that are more specialized. And my name is Morgan. My website is FinePoints.biz. Subscribe to my channel if you want a bookkeeper video every week. And I am curious, leave me a comment and let me know what is your favorite bookkeeping task, or if you have one that's vastly different than mine, or if you hate my top 5, let me know. I'm actually really interested in what tasks you like as a bookkeeper. Bookkeeper. And give this video a thumbs up if you are ready to hear the last 17 of these. Number 17 is fixing things on the balance sheet, and number 16 is creating journal entries. So these kind of fall under the category of things I'm not as confident with. I think sometimes that's a big piece of either liking something or not liking it. If you feel like you don't know how to do it, then it's not very fun. And I've had instances with this, even in like corporate America. I have a really specific example of I hated this one part of my job. I hated it. I worked in merchandising, so it was like having to reduce prices. I hated that part. And then eventually I decided I'm just gonna learn everything I need to know about the strategy for this one thing. And then, over the course of a year, I really educated myself about that. I worked with my team on it, and then I actually kind of became an expert in that one thing. And then I was able to help out actually other people in the district and kind of teach about that thing. So that was a really good lesson to me, that if you invest a lot of time into something, often it becomes more enjoyable. So fixing things on the balance sheet and then creating journal entries, I can do both of those. Oftentimes I feel like I know how I want it to look. So for example, one time I input a loan as a liability, and then every time we made a payment to the loan, I would put it, in that category, and it was working and working. And then at the end, it didn't balance out to zero. And I was like, dang it, I know it needs to balance. But because of a series of extreme circumstances, it wasn't working. And then I had to do a journal entry to fix it. And I actually had someone help me do that journal entry, so I made sure to do it right. But making journal entries, I can do simple ones, but often I have accountant help me. If it's something kind of confusing and we're trying to fix something with a journal entry, it's always nice to get another set of eyes on that. All right, number 15 and number 14 are finding new clients and onboarding new clients. So I actually used to hate these. I used to hate having to network and having to go out and find clients. One good thing about a bookkeeper is once you have your max, maybe you just want 10 clients and that's all the time you have, then you don't necessarily have to keep marketing forever. But over time, I've really kind of honed in my networking ability and my marketing ability, and I'm able to talk about my business and kind of explain more clearly what I do. So I will do a shameless plug here. I made a class all about bookkeeper marketing. So if you are looking for more bookkeeping clients, definitely check that out. There's a free masterclass you can take kind of as an intro also that gives you a taste of the class. So I'm gonna link that down below. The free masterclass is called How I Got My First 3 Clients, and then the longer course is called Bookkeeper Marketing Coach. So we're kind of hanging out in the middle group of things I like okay now. The next one, number 13, is year-end stuff, so kind of closing up the books year-end. And for a while I kind of didn't know if I was doing this correctly. I did make a video about that, so you can check out that with kind of what year-end closing is. A lot of it you're kind of doing as you go along. So if you're doing it, if you're keeping up on it, there's not that much to do at year-end. So I kind of like that now. 12 is recording meals. So some meals are deductible at 50% and some are deductible at 100%, depending on what type of party the business is having. So I was kind of annoyed and confused by that for many years, but then again, I figured out a system and now I really enjoy it. So I just have 2 categories in QuickBooks. Most of the meals are the 50% deduction, and then if I can tell it's a larger amount, or if I know that they just had a Christmas party or something, I will put that in the 100%. And if I'm not sure, I'll just shoot a quick email or a spreadsheet to my client and ask them for sure. Number 11 is small cleanups. So I don't really mind small cleanups. I talk about that I do not love giant ones, but small ones are fine. Number 10 is payroll. And I will say this is payroll with a payroll company. This one is kind of hard, but I like it when it works. Usually I use the payroll company Gusto, and I sync Gusto into QuickBooks. And I really like that because it creates a journal entry for me automatically. And then at the end of the year, usually my accountant is like, your payroll is balancing perfectly. And that's because it's, just feeding from Gusto. But as long as there aren't too many issues, I do find payroll fun now. I put bill pay and invoicing as numbers 9 and 10. I think bill pay is a little bit easier, but I also don't find it as necessary. So usually that's just collecting bills from all the vendors and then paying them. I had a client where I had to print out checks for each vendor. That was not the best. But usually if you're just paying them online, that's pretty easy. So bill pay, number 9. Invoicing, I think this is a little bit harder, but it's also kind of fun. So it's, and it can be very complex or very simple. So usually it's just creating an invoice for one of your clients. So if you're working for a veterinarian, it is going to be the dog owner that you are invoicing. And then when the dog owner pays that invoice, you record it in QuickBooks. So I do get some satisfaction from, marking as invoices paid or pulling reports to see how much outstanding money is out there and following up on invoices. So I think that's a good solid number 8. All right, number 7, I put as fixing client pain points. points. So I really love doing this. It's very satisfying, and especially involves like listening to what your client is telling you is their pain point and then thinking of a creative solution and then implementing it. And oftentimes there's a lot of appreciation when you do that for someone. So one example of this is I had a client I was doing medical billing for. So a lot of it was working with insurance companies, and it kind of ended up being a lot of having to call insurance companies and follow up to see if things were covered. And I kind of helped the business owner come up with a better system for this, and it actually involved hiring another person to do that because she was paying me to do it at a bookkeeper rate, but really she could, have more of like an office assistant type person do that. So I helped her actually find a person that I knew that could do it well and then onboard and hire that person. So that was like a pain point that we worked together to fix. And I just feel like anytime you're helping out these business owners, your clients, like that is so much value added to them. Number 6 is categorizing. So in that bank tab or bank feeds area of QuickBooks, just categorizing all the transactions. That is like the bread and butter, the kind of basic bookkeeping tasks. And if you hate doing that, I don't know if being a bookkeeper is for you. It is kind of tedious. It can be a little boring sometimes, and I'm not gonna say I love it every day, but overall, I do find it pretty like easy and satisfying. And there's a lot of AI now that automatically like learns like where things go, so that is really helpful as well. All right, and now we're into the top 5 of my favorite bookkeeping things. Hopefully you're excited. Number 5 is organizing the chart of accounts. And when I read this, I was like, ooh, maybe I should put this higher because I really like doing this. I don't know, I think this is kind of a weird thing that I do maybe more than other people. But I love looking at the profit and loss statement and figuring out how it's going to like look the best and how it's going to function the best. And this can vary a lot client to client, and some clients are going to have, are going to want it a certain way, or they'll have opinions, but oftentimes they don't care. And I'm pretty good at like sorting things in a way that makes sense to people. So after I've been working with the client for like a year and kind of know their business, I'll make either small tweaks or large tweaks depending on what is needed. So just like a small example is, for one of my clients, I separated out their annual expenses from their monthly expenses because it was getting confusing with the annual expenses because they had like 5 things that they would pay like $10,000 like one month. And then it's like, you're like, why? So then it kind of like pulls those away from the monthly expenses. So then the monthly expenses stay more consistent. It's like rent and like different utilities. And then, so it's kind of like consistent. And then you can see the annual expenses more clearly. Wow, the sun just came out from behind a cloud. So hopefully that's not too distracting, but maybe it is a good omen for my last few. So number 4 is sending reports. I really like sending reports to clients. I like thinking about the data that they will need to make their decisions and, sending the right report. So maybe they want to know how much, salary they've taken out. So I'd go to the balance sheet and find owner's draws and send them a report of owner's draws. Or maybe I'm like, oh, you've been spending a lot on advertising. Here's a report of everything that you've spent on advertising. Like, is there anything that you want to tweak at all for this? Honestly, typically I'm just sending a profit and loss and a balance sheet, but if there's any other extra things, I find that fun. Number 3 is reconciling the bank account because it's so satisfying when that top number says 0, which means it's all balanced out and you're good to go, and you can click reconcile. Love that. I do hate it when there's a problem and it does not reconcile. That's terrible. Number 2 is creating systems. So this is kind of similar to that other one I said that was like fixing the pain points, but systems I find even more enjoyable because it's like creating like a workflow that is efficient for my clients. So this is how we do bank deposits. This is how we record them. This is the information I need in QuickBooks. Sometimes there's multiple people involved that all need different information. So creating a system I find really satisfying. And my number 1 favorite thing about being a bookkeeper is analyzing reports. So I did kind of touch on this in the sending reports one, but it is looking at all the financial data for my client and, making suggestions or pointing things out that they might not see. Or, if they have a really bad month, like a really, if they're losing money one month, then I can go through the report and analyze it and see like, why did we lose money? Because, oh, we had these like big expenses. Next year, maybe if you want things to be like more leveled out, then we could pay these expenses in different months. Or maybe there's one category that's really high. Your rent is really high. It's a higher percentage than we would like to see, for your business. Like, are we able to maybe sublease some of those, offices out? Or does it make sense to possibly move buildings? I know that's a pretty big one, but anytime I I feel like I have a very close look at the finances, a close look at the books, even more so, than my clients do, because I'm looking at every single transaction and I'm categorizing every single thing. So I think even though I'm not trained as like CFO, I do have a valuable opinion and I'm able to share that with clients. So don't forget to tell me in the comments what your favorite parts are about being a bookkeeper. I'm interested to hear. All right, I will talk to you guys again next week. Thanks.